Hi everyone, welcome to my latest vlog. Today I'd like to talk about a post that I put up on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. And the post had to do with using the idea of foreign aid as soft power, as a tool for soft power. And as usual, I was very critical of it, as I am about everything that has to do with foreign aid. But the last paragraph of that post touched on an issue that I want to talk about in more detail. And that is the idea of narratives within foreign aid or the global development industry. And so we've heard this term a lot recently, right? What is the narrative? We need to change the narrative. But what about the narrative? And I find that a very condescending and patronizing way of talking about foreign aid. To think about foreign aid as a narrative, for me, is completely belying the idea of what foreign aid is theoretically meant to do. And instead of amplifying the real issues that foreign aid is supposed to address, narratives within foreign aid become a way of how to sell foreign aid. And that's how I interpret the word narrative when we talk about it within foreign aid. So when we talk about, or rather not we, I should say, when the development communicators within this industry, because that's an entire sub-industry within this sector, isn't it? The whole idea of development communication, not about how do we communicate the issues that the world is currently going through or has been going through, but how do we communicate that aid is good? I mean, really, let's admit it. That's what development communications is all about. How do we convince people that foreign aid is good and that you are doing a good thing or we are doing a good thing? And that's how I see the word narrative in this as well. So, how do we spin a story that will convince the general public that foreign aid is actually a good thing? Not about how do we stop war or how do we prevent crime from happening or how do we prevent corruption or how do we bring the guilty to justice. No, let's talk about how foreign aid is a good thing. So really, we're talking about marketing strategy here, right? And that has come into focus a whole lot more since the aid cuts came in January of this year. Because suddenly all the development communicators, most of them sitting in the global north, started to go berserk and go, oh my God, so how do we reframe foreign aid as a good thing again? How do we convince governments who are cutting their aid budgets to not to do this? We need to come up with a new narrative for foreign aid. And that narrative in this case was, let's talk about aid as soft power. That in itself is problematic, and that's what I touched upon in my post, and which is coming out in a slightly more expanded edition either today or next week. The idea, there are two things here. One is the idea of narrative and storytelling and spinning something to your advantage. And the other idea, the other issue here is of aid as soft power. And I think both are connected indirectly. So let's go to the second one first, aid as soft power. Now, I was very clear in my post that this is a very, very dangerous approach. Power in any form is dangerous, whether it's soft power or hard power. And hard power in the case of global development is mostly military. And IFIs, the international financial institutions, and political power. And soft power is aid, or nice things like, cultural exchange, knowledge exchange, educational exchange, and foreign aid, right? So how do we influence other countries by using these tools that bring across, a real niceness to relationships between countries? And the dangerous part of it here is that a lot of the niceness hides the dark side of aid, which is control over resources and decision making and keeping countries subservient and dependent on richer countries for survival, right? Nobody talks about that as part of narratives. But no, let's talk about how aid is good. So, coming back to the first point, the idea of narratives within aid is problematic because the stories that you are trying to tell are stories that you are actually manufacturing out of the entire illusion that is foreign aid. So you're manufacturing stories about poor people being helped, about the hungry being given food, about the sick being given medication, about the unempowered and powerless being empowered. And you pick and choose those stories out of, a plethora of projects that northern organizations go and do in countries of the global south, and then you amplify them as part of a larger marketing strategy to advertise foreign aid. I've always been so confused about the fact that large INGOs, the global INGOs that we mostly talk about, so the Oxfams or the SAVES or the PLANs or the CARES of the world, all of them have a donate button on their websites. These are multi-million-dollar global organizations that get millions and millions of dollars every year from northern governments to do projects all around the world. They've got offices all around the world. They've got staff all around the world. And they have a donate button that says, please donate to us today so that we can help a poor child. Or donate, one even says donate an animal so that we can provide livelihoods to the poor, I don't know, pastoralists, peasants, agricultures, somewhere in the global south. Why would you have a donate button? How much more money do you want? And why do you want people to think that you are a charity when actually you are not? You are the controllers of millions and millions of dollars of foreign aid that governments give. And then you talk about localization, about, let's give more money to, to directly to organizations, many of whom don't have donate buttons on their websites, many of whom don't even have websites for that matter. So this whole idea of let's spin a story of destitution, of the fact, and more dangerous in this case is, from what I'm hearing, is let's spin a story about how if we give foreign aid to poor countries, our countries will remain safe. And it is a question of national security if we give foreign aid, because then other countries won't attack us. I just do not see the logic in that. I mean, I'm speechless. And that's why this whole idea of a narrative, or the idea of storytelling, whether you call it ethical, moral, local, creative, what have you, is just completely wrong. People's lives are not stories to tell, whether you tell them or they tell them. People's lives are not a marketing campaign for you to be able to fundraise for your organization to do good. People's lives are not sound bites or little videos for you to use as communication tools to tell the public of your countries that aid is a good thing. Your tax money is going into a really good thing. All this is extremely patronizing, extremely condescending, and just downright wrong. So please don't use foreign aid as a narrative. There is no such thing as a narrative for people's lives. And people's lives differ around the world. And that's the other dangerous part, right? That you have the power to pick and choose whose story you want to tell and how you want to tell it. This whole idea of ethical storytelling is just basically a mask over the fact that you still want to tell the stories of other people. My life is not a story. My life may be my own story. That's my personal business. You don't get to tell my story to market your wares to the public. So I'm going to end there before I get even angrier. But please, do not use foreign aid as a narrative, and certainly do not use the idea of foreign aid as a soft power approach narrative. Very, very dangerous on all counts. Please follow and subscribe to my channel on YouTube, Timbri's Talks, and I will see you again next time with my next vlog. Take care, everyone. Bye.